Welcome to In Biz Together, the podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs across all industries. I'm Michelle Lestis, business owner, coach, and author of In Business with Yourself. It's great to have you listening in. So, Ian, you're very welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So, before we begin, I'm going to give a little background to Ian and Fleet Focus. Ian is the owner of Fleet Focus, a fleet management company that supplies car leasing, purchase and maintenance schemes to all sizes of businesses across the island of Ireland. Ian is a typical progressor business identity in that he has worked in the industry for many years, initially in car sales before moving into contract hire. So like all progressors, he knows his industry very well. So Ian, your journey is a really interesting one, like many of the business people that I meet in my travels. But what's really interesting about you is that you have been in the same industry for many, many years. You've worked within it, so you know it really well. And now you've started your own business within that same industry. So it's really just interesting, Ian, to hear a little bit about that journey and sort of the challenges that you would have met along the way, especially when you moved from working within it to setting up your own business.
Yes, going back to 87, which is really when I started in the motor industry. I'd done a degree at University of Ulster, only to get some education, not with any vocation in mind, and I suppose stumbled into car sales. It seemed like something to make some money at, and so that seemed to go. It was with Agnews. They do give you good training right back then, and at that time it was a family-owned business. So I spent about 4 years in retail, as you would call it, in the showroom, and built up a reasonable clientele. Probably nowhere to go at that point. I'm too young to go into management. So and then I moved into fleet sales for a couple of years for Volkswagen, and then into the contract hire world, which in '96 was fairly in its infancy. There have been some changes to HMRC. So there have been some extra benefits you get from leasing that you didn't get prior to that. It didn't have a great name, truthfully, because of sometimes the end of contract period being a little acrimonious, let me say, from the point of view of recharges, etc. But Agnew started their own company called Agnew Corporate, and I was basically their second employee. The other gentleman that started it had experience, so I spent about 11, 12 years there, which I enjoyed, working my way up to being sales manager, but I've always been very much a hands-on. I don't like sitting in a room and not talking to people. So when I deal with people, I like to take them from start to end, basically. And at that point, I got asked to join another company, a rival, and then spent another 8 years there. And then from that point, decided when I hit 50 that I should start to do my own thing.
Okay, so you sort of had a pretty long career actually within the industry before you went out, but then again that's really common among many business owners, to come out. We sort of have that, either go out early in your career or maybe come out in that later part of your career. So at the age of 50 then you set up your own business at that stage. And so
that was basically a leasing business called FleetControlled. I thankfully had a fairly good base of customers, having dealt with them for maybe some of them over 20 years. So I got reassurance from them that they would support me. And that business is still going. But my newest venture is Fleet Focus, which is a slight tangent, but very much connected to the fleet business and company cars, company vehicles.
So you've nearly gone around in the circle again, Ian, in terms of back into the fleet cars, and when you sort of went into that business, that element of the business, and what did you say, 2009? So you've sort of maybe come full circle in that respect to some degree.
Well, yeah, I suppose what I've always enjoyed doing is talking to people and finding out how I can help them. I see my business as a solution business, not as a selling business. So most people just need help with what they have struggles with and problems with, and hopefully my experience can help them do that. So it really was a Fleet Focus customer, a business who said to me, our FleetControlled business, that said to me, you have consult in your title, do you do any consultation? Which I didn't really. I called it that because I like to consult with people, because if you don't talk to them and listen, you'll never get the right thing. And that led me to setting up with a business partner in Fleet Focus, Gareth Law, who had quite a bit of experience in business improvement. And ultimately, all the costs in a business hopefully can be reduced or changed in the way to lower overhead, which is really what we're about. We're an outsourced fleet management company, so we can help people with lots of things around the vehicle. It's not about supplying the vehicle, it's managing the vehicle, and that in the most economic way.
Ian, is it a fair comment to say that buying a car now in that way with finance and so on is more about the actual finance package than it really is about the car? Or is that an unfair assessment to make?
Yeah, the finance is the way that virtually 95% of people do it. 80% of businesses do it. It's probably even bigger than that. That statistic is a couple of years old. Most of them do it on a contract hire basis, purely because of allowances, tax allowances, and the fact that cash flow is this low deposit, based on a low deposit model. Your maintenance is included, so you have no surprises, and you don't have to sell the car at the end. So that becomes a very comfortable way for a business to get involved. They don't really want to worry about how much tires cost or if it breaks down or whatever. But yeah, it's important. It is very much important still to get the right car for the right person.
And it's interesting, actually. One of the things that I perhaps go on a little bit now at this point in time is with COVID and lockdowns and everything that everyone's been through. I can definitely see where our expectations as customers are changing. And I think as we begin to unlock, consumer expectations will change even more. So, having been around such an industry for many years, Ian, what would be the sort of the key change that you have seen in customers' expectations over the years?
Or probably people expect a lot of things online. They expect a lot of things quickly, and that's, I suppose, a symptom of email and all the other WhatsApp and all the different ways we communicate now. People know if you've been on, want an answer back in a few minutes. So yeah, it's probably speed's the big thing. If they can do things outside office hours and access websites and look at offers, sometimes they'll do some of the research there. But I still believe most people do want to have a conversation and, if possible, meet to discuss, because things on email and some of the other mediums, you can say one thing and mean it, and somebody else thinks you mean something else. So while the expectation's high for immediate response, I think you've got to be careful you don't rush into the wrong thing. Quite a few people over lockdown ordered cars without seeing them and without driving them, especially in the last 3 months. So that's a danger in my book. You know, you really got to make sure you get the right vehicle, not just from how much it's costing, but is it the right fit? Can't you see out of it? Is it comfortable? All those things. Now, that's coupled with the change to electric vehicles, because most of the vehicles I sell now are either full electric or a hybrid plug-in. So it's basically something that begins to almost muddy the waters. So I'm hoping people will get back to wanting to meet again. That's certainly how it works for me.
Is it really?
Too big a purchase.
Yeah, and I mean, isn't it really interesting that for all of this digital revolution almost that we've had, that we still, as people, continue to come back to relationships, and selling is about relationships. And no matter how hard we try or to ignore that, that we're still pulled back to the fact that we are human beings, and part of how we do business is actually to relate to each other. And it's quite amazing, isn't it, really, that we...
It is. You can do, I'm not saying Zoom isn't good, Teams aren't good, but they're not a medium to use to have a proper conversation and a proper discussion. Because people tend to be a little bit uncomfortable and be, especially if there's other people around, not that open and maybe not explain everything. So I do think they have their place. Don't get me wrong, we couldn't survive without email and other ways of contacting. But now, thankfully, I'm getting back to meeting people. And that, both in my leasing business, is really important, but very much so in Fleet Focus. Because you've got to sit down with people for an hour in a room. Then you get to hear about the things that maybe they wouldn't have talked about on a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting. So, no, I think that's definitely what I take from it. Customer expectation is always high, and I'm the same.
Yeah.
But a couple of emails back and forward are not what I call service,
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. And I suppose, as you rightly bring up the fact, and we're all moving towards these low and no green gas emissions, and we work towards that target, and we look at more green energy within our cars and the vehicles we use. We're all going to need to be educated, and we're all going to need those relationships building. So, Ian, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Really interesting. Really interesting also to see where we're going, as well as the width of depth of experience that you have in the industry. Thank you very much for joining me today, and it's been a real pleasure to chat to you.
Thanks for your time, Michelle. I appreciate it.
If you want to know more about making your business grow, or which identity you are, In Business with Yourself is available at www.orphanpress.com or on Amazon Books or at any Waterstones bookstore. You can also contact me directly at www.michellelestis.com. I'm Michelle Lestis. Thank you for listening in. Until the next time.